Authorities are expected to release formal charges today against suspect Tyler Robinson in the shooting death of Charlie Kirk. A press conference explaining the charges is set for 2 p.m., but the Utah County Attorney has already released a set of potential charges: aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, and felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury. Robinson is also scheduled to make his first court appearance at 3 p.m. Joining us for Insight is Jeremy Rosenthal, a trial attorney and the founding partner of Rosenthal, Calabas and Therian. Good to have you with us, Jeremy. The suspect is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Based on what we know so far, how close are the authorities to proving guilt?
I think what they've released publicly is pretty condemning for guilt. I think the big issue in this case is whether or not he's going to be subject to the death penalty. I think they're going to try to have the death penalty in this case. I think that's obviously going to be one of their goals. And the question is whether or not they're legally going to get there. There's a lot of evidence here that are sort of these paper cuts that slowly but surely really wall him in. New DNA evidence on the towel, his words, his admissions to family, the things that they've found online, the timeline, all of these things sort of really wall him in. So I didn't do it as really not a defense, or it's not looking like a very good defense. There may be some other defensive tactics out there, but the main battle lines in this case are whether or not he's going to be executed.
Yeah, and what do you think would be the factors in whether the prosecution pursues that course?
In Utah, the law says that it's called aggravated murder, as you just said, and aggravated murder is typically going to be murder with an aggravating factor, murder plus one, and that plus one can be one of many aggravating factors that typically trigger a capital murder charge. Usually it's another victim or more than one victim, like we saw in the Brian Koberger case in Idaho, or it can be the identity of the victim, that being a police officer, that being a child. Sometimes if there's in the commission of another felony, that can be the trigger for it. In this instance, I think what the authorities in Utah will most likely do is they'll allege that it was a hazardous. In other words, it was multiple people were endangered by these actions. Firing a firearm into a crowd of 3,000 people, all of the chaos, all of the stampede that sort of ensued from that was certainly very dangerous, and that could trigger the death penalty. Ultimately, they have to prove that he is a future danger. That is what the jury will be told the standard is if they want to execute Tyler Robinson.
And are there both federal and state charges here? And how does that potentially affect the legal process?
At the moment, there are only state charges. That's another great question, is whether or not the feds are going to get involved here. Why would the feds be involved? Well, I think they certainly want to bite at this apple. There's certainly a lot of anger towards him. The Department of Justice has really been very instrumental here in doing this, but very strong words from Donald Trump, from J.D. Vance, indicate that if the feds can get involved, that they will get involved. What prevents them from getting involved, if anything, is the fact that they're having a hard time finding something to charge him with federally. Those things would typically be some type of interstate activity going from one state to another. So far, we haven't heard anything about that. Maybe something will show up that sort of does. Another would be that he is trying to, in essence, incite something bigger than himself, bigger than just his own animosity or disliking of Charlie Kirk. We've seen a lot of messages online. Some of his comments show that in some way he was obsessed with Kirk. Others that he clearly disapproved of Charlie Kirk, didn't like his message. Legally, that might not be enough to get to a charge of some type of terroristic intent, trying to have a broader movement sort of follow him, kind of almost like Luigi Mangione against the insurance industry.
So how long do you expect this process to take, and what would be the major steps before it's kind of legally reconciled?
Right now, the state of Utah is moving forward. They've obviously got their court hearing later on today. We'll see what happens there. I don't think there's going to be a lot of surprises. Mr. Robinson's going to ask to be bonded out. I don't think the court's going to do that. And then what will happen is that they're going to have some long-term scheduling. The case needs to go before what's called a grand jury in Utah. to ultimately indict him for the aggravated murder. The charges so far being, I believe, informal. And we'll see what the feds do and what they come back with. There's a little more bureaucracy with the Department of Justice, and there's a few more layers to go through for their decision making. But we'll see what they say. I would anticipate that we find something out this week about whether or not the feds are leaning at trying to charge him. And if they can charge him in some way, I think they will.
And just lastly, FBI Director Kash Patel is being questioned today in a pre-scheduled Senate hearing, in part about the FBI's handling of the response and investigation in this particular killing. Any comments there?
Obviously, he's going to make the case that he's been very aggressive in investigating and assisting local law enforcement there. I think that a lot of resources have obviously been put in place here to do that. And he's been very public about his comments on what they've done and what the evidence shows. I don't know what criticism, if any, he's going to get for this, but if there is, we'll see it at the Senate confirmation or at the Senate hearing.
Yeah.
But I'm looking to see at the court hearing this afternoon just exactly how that goes. And what would be interesting about Mr. Patel's statements today is if they indicate any type of legal theory that the federal government would use to somehow charge Tyler Robinson federally.
Yes, very interesting. Keep an eye on that. Thank you so much for your time today, Jeremy Rosenthal.
Have a good day.